Okay, let's call the City Council Finance Committee to order on April 24th. And Mr. Martin, the sales tax report.
Thank you. We don't have, the sales tax before you today reflects what we looked at 30 days ago because the state hasn't posted the new numbers.
Still looks good.
Still, yes, hey, take what you can get. That's
Very positive way to look at it.
yeah. And I did reformat it according to Sean's request to take out how that was, projecting before. So, but real estate excise tax collection is shown there, and you can see April was a strong.
One more tweak here, Alan.
Yeah.
If this $1 million too is tracking to whatever is hidden in these shell cells, I think what Sean's really looking for is that total. This one's done this way. This total to do the same. Because this is what we're projecting for the year, the $1.3 million.
Right.
No, that's
I
the
thought-
actual.
I thought he wanted the difference changed, the 47,000.
Okay.
I mean, we can look at
Doesn't
it.
this
That's the
this-
difference he wanted.
different? Is this the difference between? This appears to me
Well,
that
this is the
adding downward.
right is the actual. The 2017 is actual,
Okay.
and then the far corner is the difference between our projected and our actual.
So essentially, we're 48,000
Yeah.
ahead.
Ahead. Okay.
Right. I mean, I don't. Well,
I can work with it. This number here isn't relevant either. This is the total of these numbers that aren't in here.
No.
no.
Is
No,
it
it's not the
350.
total of those three. That's the
Is it
total of
1,000,001?
those.
Okay, never mind. I'll be quiet.
Okay.
I'm reading it wrong. You're right.
Sit over there, Mr. Mayor, and be quiet.
I will.
So real estate excise tax collection, you can see, is
It's good.
had the March bump, but April's strong.
Oh,
very
yeah.
strong.
Okay.
And our fund balance is strong as well, although we will have some expenses against that, notably the 720 building. The budget amendment for that was 180,000 that I put in, so we could, and so that contract came in at what, 229?
229, and we do need to also, if we can, before then too, we're gonna have some moving expenses, some miscellaneous stuff too, so we should, a little bit more north of that is what our real cost is gonna be.
Probably have some small equipment cost as well, as IT gets in there and sets it all up. So we'll go back over, I'll send out an email this week to the principals involved with that and say, come up with your estimate of the amounts over and above the 229, and I'll do a budget amendment to keep this current. So you'll see that come forward.
Probably won't see the budget amendment with the award of the contract tomorrow night, though, I don't believe.
No, I didn't have it in time, so. But anyway, we got the 180,000, so
Yeah.
it's not like we don't have, well, yeah, we can always raise it.
That's coming out of REIT?
Yeah, ultimately, that's where it'll come out of.
Okay.
Unless there was something that wasn't allowed. And then we don't know that yet until we see what they are.
Everything we can pull from REIT, we will.
And the helpful, of course, was that large sale that we had of the,
Yes.
250.
right.
We went through that fast.
We did.
We put it to
Like every
use.
good government agency.
We put it to use.
No, exactly,
Right.
exactly. We were fortunate that it allowed us to meet the needs.
Very good. So, and then you've got the current expense cash flows for March there. That's just kind of an indicator. I'll note that, of course, we're going to all pay our property taxes at the end of the month. So we'll get that influx of money. Generally, there are people that pay their whole year in April 30th, so we'll get more in the first half and the second half by some percentage. The money is distributed by the treasurer by the 10th of May is their distribution date. And so, in the old days, you used to see money on the end of May, and then the end of June, the state statute was changed to say that the treasurer has to distribute it by the 10th. And the amount that trickles in now is much less in June because systems are so much better now at capturing what they run them so much faster than the days when we used to do it in the courthouse itself.
I'm going to take you off task for a minute, but we get money from the state, from the gas tax, is that correct?
We do.
Okay, does that come in monthly or
Yes, it
annually?
does.
It comes in monthly? What's our, do you know off the top of your head what our annual total on that is?
Oh, man, it's based on population.
Okay,
There's two different pieces of it. What I'll do is I'll send you an email.
okay,
I could give you a guess, but I would rather not.
okay.
And I'll add that answer to the minutes.
Thank
That's
you.
all right. So anyway, that's kind of it. So we're gonna see it pop up in our cash balances, really on a cash flow basis, when we look at this next time. So that's kind of in a nutshell, where the sales tax is. Any other questions?
No, others have it.
And then, of course, we've gone to looking at the funds, the various funds of the city to follow along as well as due diligence, as well as giving the council, finance committee a good idea where we're at. You're gonna notice that a couple things popped up there. Everything else falls into the range that's expected as far as cash flows of our revenues and our expenses. The two pieces that pop up really, or the main one, is the storm drainage utility that shows a period adjustment of $447,000 in the positive. That is for the most part reimbursements on the DeCant facility, and some other grant reimbursements that had been previously spent and now reimbursed. So no great piece there. Water sewer utilities, yes, portion of that was reimbursements as well on different projects. So that's what you're seeing there, more than increased revenue. And everything falls into the range of what we would expect it to be based on historical cash flows. And then, of course, we break down the different accounts in more detail there, so you can actually see within Fund 109 and then within the Impact Mitigation Fee Fund, those different amounts that are allocated to the different portions of what's the accounts within the fund. And as I mention each time, the Transportation Benefit District vehicle license fee is a deposit into the street fund. And I didn't bring that number with me, but it was tracking to what our expectations were. And you can note of that as well. I was out the last 2 weeks and then just a little bit last week, so I've been pedaling. Did you see the agenda went out at about 4 o'clock on Friday? So I was pedaling as fast
You
as
missed some time, and then the day you were here, you were in your mandatory first aid training, so
Right.
that wasn't very productive.
Right, well, unless you have a heart attack.
Unless you have a
and I
heart
saved
attack.
it.
Yeah.
Then you can thank me later.
And it's interesting, everybody in City Hall is required to have first aid card. Me too. So, first time in my life.
I've used it twice.
First time you, just first aid or CPR?
The first aid, the CPR course. I got a son as an EMT and a wife as a medical provider. You go save him.
People
Helps.
fall over all
Oh.
the time.
Yep.
So anyway, that's kind of the long and short of
Alright.
that as well. Now, the other, what I provided you here is something probably you'll want to study in a little bit more greater detail. I didn't go, this is the updated version that includes our big budget amendment that we did back in March, at the end of March, so that we actually have your footing totals actually reflect those larger movements. And I just printed that, had that printed on Friday afternoon, but that is by departments, the various amounts. The only thing that I'm aware of, and I mentioned this last time, is we've had some retirements that we didn't know that we were gonna have buyouts on. So as part of the biennial review, the first thing I'm going to do is to go back and look at the wage and benefit package for the city as a whole, and go back, and there may be some adjustments to that to make sure we got it captured correctly. There's plenty of available funding to do that. That's not my concern. My concern is that we don't get, you get out in the latter part of 2018 and it looks like you're in red in some of the categories, and you're wondering why. I'd rather explain it during the biennial review and have the full council understand it, and not have it be in the red than to say, oh, we're gonna adjust it at the end of 2018. What my goal here has been is to set this up so when you roll into 2019, the city's in a strong position, and that everybody, all 7 council people, are comfortable with rolling into another biennial budget period, because I really want that to be a success. I think you can see already that you're benefiting by the biennial budget.
And we'd be starting gathering data for the upcoming budget. And
Right.
we could focus on Tremont and
Right. The
pathways and, in our code development instead.
Right, and I think that I've seen it, the council does now think a little bit long range as we talk about what we're gonna do in 2018, and say we'll get to that to 2019. That's really what you wanna be doing, because what it's doing by a process is keeping everybody focused on the task at hand, and that's bringing these projects in on time, under budget, and then to the degree of what the expectations were of the council and the citizens on how they ultimately look and help the
In
public.
in the report you gave us, it shows us it answers my question about the motor vehicle
Oh, okay.
street tax.
Oh, you got it.
It's here, so.
Okay, good.
I was just looking for that, Beck, where was it?
It's on page 5, towards the bottom. It's under
Oh, on the-
RO3.
Okay, that's the gas tax, but that's not the TBD.
Oh, the TBD is up further. It's under, RO1. Still on page 5. Go to page 5.
Under transportation.
Yeah,
About in the middle.
it's about in the middle.
Okay. There it is, thank you.
Do you know if this is as of first quarter, the end of March?
It is.
Okay. Thank you. This will be interesting to
Mhm.
review.
The TBD track, of course, we implemented the first of the year. It started out slow and is ramping up, so that first quarter may not be reflective as what we're gonna consistently get.
We've had some people come in and they've been charged when they're outside the city. And I just got that on Thursday, and I don't really know, how the refund works on that. They've been bounced around. They paid for it at the county and at their window.
Yeah.
And they were collected the $20. Then when they went back and showed that they were outside the city limits, they said they got to get the refund from the city. So they came down here. I said, I'm not sure that that's where the refund comes from. So I haven't found the construct on that. And my concern of just not
Because the
right.
state got a sliver of it too.
Yeah, they get 1% administrative fee. My concern is that you'd refund them too. You didn't have the authority, you weren't the authority to refund them. That's one problem. The other problem is, would it ever get corrected?
That was correct.
And
Are
how
we
would
gonna
it
have
be
to-
corrected? Would the state send us a bill for what we've already reimbursed?
I don't know, and
Yeah.
I don't know if they'd ever get their record straightened out to say these people aren't in the city limits. So I'm just, when I got back on Thursday and after my heart attack training, I had that on my desk. I told the staff, give it to me and I'll look at it. So that's one of the things I gotta look at.
I wonder how many there may be.
I don't know.
One so
Hopefully-
far.
Yeah, hopefully not many.
Well, there one so far, but they said there were several people on the street. So I don't know what that means, so I gotta follow up on this. I don't know if the
Well, it
neighbors
might be
talked.
our annual problem of an address of Port Orchard.
It's
Mhm.
ongoing,
Oh, yeah,
that's right.
yeah.
That's ongoing, that's right. So anyway, just as a due diligence, I'm aware of
Yeah.
it, I'm gonna look into it, and we'll make the people whole, whatever the statutory construct is, I just don't know what that is.
Okay.
How long, I mean, let's say this goes on for 10 years and somebody finally, well, wait a
Figures it.
minute.
Oh, I think you can
What's the
only,
statute of limitations?
Where is, yeah, so I
I
guess,
think it's 3 years.
Okay.
If, generally, if the statute isn't specific and says 3 years, there's other statutes that typically say, like your water, sewer, storm, have 3 years. And that's what you tend to do. You tend to, the attorney and the people will say, well, this is what the state, But no, you're not gonna go back that far. If it's longer, it's usually very specific to that. Somebody sued over at one point or another. There's some case law someplace. So there's that piece. What's next up for bid? First quarter, we did that.
Yep.
We looked at the funds.
And we're on vacation bonds.
I just wanted to let you know that we've got the preliminary official statement in its final draft form, as far as I know it to be. I've gone through it. I talked to DA Davidson on Friday. They'll have the final draft to us next Wednesday, and I'll spend quite a bit of time to go through and double check that, with the idea that we're going to have it due on May 10th. The working group that's working on the bonds has a due diligence meeting with DA Davidson, the attorney, and we'll go through that and make sure, I'll just pass this around. This is the things we're going to go over. Leading up to the presentation to S&P. S&P is supposed to send me a letter, I understand, by email, and the city has to, I can do it. The city has to acknowledge that S&P's, what they're gonna do for the city as far as getting a rating. And I haven't seen that yet, so I'll follow up on that this week. So the next step is the due diligence, then a day or two after that, we'll go to S&P. If in fact, occasionally, and I don't know how S&P does it, I'm more familiar with Moody's on the local level. I was more involved in Moody's at the state. S&P was, of course, state had everything, all the big stuff rated by all three, Fitch,
Right.
Moody's, and S&P. But on our smaller transactions, which were those under 25 million for this state, I'd say 30 million, then we used Moody's on small borrowings, just because they knew the state at that time a little bit better. That's all changed, of course, after 2008 and 9. So S&P is really the one they say you go to today. So Moody's would, for example, have a local official sit in, and they do more or less the local piece of it, and get the flavor of the day. I don't know if they'll ask for that, but if they do, I'll get the word out to the committee on who you'd want to be assigned to do that, but I'll have to find out. S&P or Moody's tended to have, that flavor to it, but I don't know about this current group. I don't know. But I don't suspect any problems there. I was very thankful that you showed the leadership to do the gas tax, which was the final brick in the wall, as I said, to get that finished, so that you put yourself in the strongest financial position, at least from my judgment, that the city could, to go to the rating agency and say, we've done everything we can, which you should be really proud of. And now, of course, the challenge is to make sure we spend that money wisely and leverage it into what the public deserves. So that's good. Which leads into the piece that Beckett asked, and I forgot to put on the agenda, which was the gambling tax.
and just two more things on Tremont, I've got this on my list too. We should be going to bid this week. And
Sure.
the House and the Senate reconciled their transportation budgets. both voted, the Senate was voted late on Friday. So our 2 million is sitting on the governor's desk, approved by both sides. So we're gonna send out a press release this morning that we have our 2 million.
Are we waiting for him to sign it? No.
Brianna said not.
Okay.
We need to thank our folks
Yeah.
from the two delegation, House and Senate for.
What was
their work.
interesting, and this is again, kind of down a rabbit hole, but we had one representative not vote for the transportation budget. And then the public records request, the legislation that was important to us, only one representative voted for it, and our 2 other members of the delegation voted against it.
Who voted
So it
for
was, Michelle voted for it, Representative Coulter voted for it, and Senator Angel and Representative Young voted against it.
Interesting.
Mhm.
I was too big. I had 2 million other things I was tracking.
I know it. Well,
a dollar at a time.
I was getting ready to send a thank you note, and I double checked who had,
Mhm.
you don't get a thank you note if you voted no, so.
We did have a conference call. I was out of town, but the staff had a conference call with TIB on what's allowed to be paid by their grant.
Okay,
Even though they have a grant, but they have certain things they can and cannot reimburse for. There's a match, of course, with the $1.7 million grant. There's a match for that we'll have to track. And then, of course, the $2 million that Rob referenced, we don't know when they'll release that money and it'll be available to us. So we're gonna follow up with them and find out how they're going to, how will the city be able to access that $2 million and what their plans are for that. That all comes back to the point that when we get the bids in and you know, I would like to size, get the authorizing ordinance to sell the bonds the same night that you accept the bids for the construction. I'd like to do that all as one package, but that means we're gonna have to know exactly how much we're going to borrow from the municipal marketplace. So we'll know what our funding sources are. At that time, we'll know what our construction cost is at that time, and then we'll borrow the difference, because you don't want to borrow more than, because it's restricted to that project. And then the other moving piece we have is we're going to have storm drainage pay for its new portion of the Tremont widening, so we'll have to call that out as well.
But we're gonna use bond debt paid for from a cash flow standpoint from
Right.
the stormwater utility. So otherwise, we could pay cash for it, but then we wouldn't be able to have any matches or tackle any other projects for a number of years. We've just gotten some money in that fund, and we need to start showing some benefit to the community that, we're fixing the, dilapidated drains and
right.
so on and so forth.
And you have a 10-year, as John pointed out at that one meeting, we have a 10-year par call on those bonds, which means you can call them, and not pay the future interest on them at the end of 10 years. And that's pretty much standard all over the country to get that 10-year par call. And that 10 years comes pretty fast. By the time you do a 2-year construction and you pay a year,
Oh, yeah.
you're already getting close to what your number is. So the heavy lifting on the bonds is going to be the size. There's lots of work to do, but the real heavy lifting is the sizing of the transaction, and then getting the bond attorneys okay that you structured the payment of the storm drainage correctly. You don't want to have it. You can't have one. You could have the general fund subsidize storm drainage. You can't have storm drainage subsidize the general fund. So those bids for storm drainage will be its own column there when they bid it. So we'll have to look and see. Right now, was it $2 million? Now it's something like 1.9 million for those parts of it. But we'll just have to see what they bid it. It's broken down by about 11 categories now or something.
And the Corps gave us permission to fill that little wetland and not bridge it down by the freeway. So we
Okay.
got some savings already, a few $100,000.
So, yeah, some real some crunch time, really, you know, and I hear, there's the new fellow over there, Mike, in Public Works, and
Mike Pleasant.
and I hear good things about him from a day-to-day working relationship on his questions, his inquiries, and then his statements regarding a project like this. So I think that gives me some, you know,
Confidence.
comfort level, yeah. So that's
Already
good.
got,
Good to
he
hear.
and Heidi Draper have already sat down and she showed us how to use our accounting software for project management, which I think, well, it's always a good idea to have finance using the same spreadsheet as the engineer. It's one of our challenges. Previous project, the engineer had their own creative spreadsheet that didn't capture everything that finance did.
You know, we might consider, I don't know, this is the planning stage, so we should leave it open that if we had to have a finance committee meeting before that meeting to accept the bids on Tremont, in case there was anything that came up that had to do with sizing these bonds or anything. 'Cause I would rather discuss it here than to get in front of the council and have a bigger discussion. So we should think about that maybe around the time of the work study in May, because you're gonna accept these.
Yeah, you need, I would say you need a May, well, we had a May Finance Committee meeting on the agenda already.
No, we haven't set a May meeting.
We haven't set a date yet.
Okay,
Well, when are you gonna accept the, when do you want the council again?
I think it's 3 or 4 weeks from,
May 24th, do you wanna?
so I would
accept
say
the
that
bid?
about 30 days out, we're gonna need another meeting. So the last week in May would be.
Well, I'd like to have, when you accept the bids, do the ordinance to sell the bonds.
Right.
So we'd have to have it sized at that point, so we could end up having a meeting somewhere around that work study session, but why don't we do this, when I do the May 9th due diligence meeting, I'll send the council finance committee a summary of what that was.
Just gonna check in with Mark to make sure.
And-
It's today or it's any day this, if it isn't today, it doesn't hit the paper till Friday.
Well, I'm trying to time it to when
Yeah.
the council's gonna accept the bid.
Right.
I just don't know that if it's 3 weeks or 4 weeks from when we get the paper. It's either this Friday or next Friday, because it has to be in the Independent.
Yeah, and I think whatever the last meeting in May was, that he was gonna have it in front of you. But anyway, back to what I was saying, I'll
Just let us know.
write a summary, here, right after that May 9th meeting, the 10th, and then we may look at getting together and talking about these bonds if there's something that, to get everybody on the same
Hey,
page.
I'm up here in Finance Committee,
If we,
and we're talking about Tremont.
if
Are
our,
you gonna?
because we got this
You
2
gotta get
million,
it
we're
out the door today,
prepared
correct?
for an
Make Friday's paper, right?
$8.3
Right.
million bond.
Tomorrow noon, are you
Now,
gonna
we've
make
got
that?
this additional 2 million from the state, so hopefully we can bond less.
Yeah, we'll size
Okay.
downward, yeah.
We'll
So
size
let's
downward.
assume-
However, we need to be cognizant that the
Okay, so
bids,
let's
we don't know where
assume
the bids are
Friday's
gonna
paper.
come.
Right.
And
So
how
we
many
do
weeks does it
have a
need to be
little
there?
bit of room there.
Mhm.
But the size of the bond is going to be very important.
Right.
And we would want it to be as minimal as
Okay.
possible. Yep, 6.3 million is minimal.
Alan, when
the
would you
opening?
want or expect to have the proceeds of the bond sales?
As early as the end, well, once that ordinance is signed, we'll try and, you'll want to go into the marketplace on a Monday, Tuesday. It's going to be, we'll want kind of a cool period of time in the marketplace.
Right, that's-
So
we're
it
trying
could
to
be
plan a
any
finance
time after
committee
that.
meeting around that so
June-
that we can
June
have
10th or
these bond
something
issuance at
to
the
actually
same
put it
time.
out there.
So you're opening on
Usually
the
you get the
30th.
proceeds in a week after you close the transaction. So
Okay.
within
Yeah.
14 days,
Otherwise,
you should
it's
have
just
it
a week.
closed out and the money in the bank.
Okay, thank you.
I did go to on another piece of this, you have to put that money someplace.
Mhm.
So I went and when I went to the conference last week, I went to a seminar on managing bond proceeds just to find out what was the flavor of the day. And they pretty much said there's a local government investment pool. And they said over this period of time, you're probably the best to put your money there because the LGIP is a short-term finance tool. And what'll happen is because rates are going up, it's gonna track up with the rates. So you really don't wanna go in and buy any securities and hold it for 6 months or something, because you run the risk of locking in at a lower rate. So they said if on a transaction this size, they said go
Is
ahead.
that a state fund?
Yeah, it's run by the state treasurer. It's been around since '88. Now, as part of that too, we've had, this is to do with Tremont, but to do with your cash in these different funds. There's just short of $5 million in Kitsap Bank. And I had sent them an email and asked them to revisit the rate. And if in fact the rate isn't favorable to that, then I'm gonna move the $4 million back to the local government investment pool, because it's paying more now and it will track upwards. So there's no reason to leave $5 million in there or earn 0.5% less. I mean, that's a huge. So anyway, just so you know, maybe next month you'd see that in some time. I talked to Rebecca about it, and I didn't want to move it in April because we got to close out the end of the month and all this stuff. And I said, hey, I don't want. Let's just wait till the first of the week. So I've got to hear back, and you know, they might match it. They could come back and say no, it's. But you're going to have to signal to them that you're going to move out $4 million.
Right.
I mean, you can't. They got to have the cash to move.
So here's your dates.
Do you know what the local investment is paying right
Just a
now?
little over 80 basis points.
Yeah.
And the pool at the county is at like 1.1%. They're structured different. They have more, you know, it's more constrained at the state, just by policy. And then the bank's down at about 28 basis points. So because it's all shifted over the last few months. So that's what we're looking at. And that's kind of being driven on where are we going to put the 2 million. It's, you really can't reverse money back to the county. It builds up from the different accounts. I know Shelley Pearson that runs that.
So we just leave our money. It's not like we can move money
Right.
to it.
Right.
We just don't spend the money that's there and let it accrue.
Right. And of course, these are just depositories to us. We're the ones putting the account name
What
to the
money's
cash.
in the county?
I mean, you could say
Property
that
tax.
Okay.
you could do, the treasury can say the money that's in Kitsap Bank is now the money.
They collect it and they just
They
sit
just
on
move
it
it.
unless we pull it out.
You see what I mean? If you had 100,000 here, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Because we're the treasury.
Right.
It's just
They're
like a bank account.
depository.
Yeah.
And when we need it, we write a check.
I mean, I do it simpler than that here, but.
Even though
that's-
it's property tax money.
Right.
We
Right.
can, all
Right.
money's green.
Right. So I'm trying to make this work at the
Right.
best, in the best interest of the city, but be simple enough that nobody's confused by it, and it's just straightforward, off the shelf, makes sense what the best practice is now, because your real management on this for the treasury is going to be the mismatch between what, we're gonna have this, the big chart, which I'll show you, that has by percentage of what the project administrators, percentage of what they're going to review each month. We're gonna consider, they're saying, well, we gotta review, you know, the new whatever. We're gonna consider it's finished and it has to be paid for. Well, that might show in January, we might build for it in February, so you're gonna have this type. So the real heavy lifting is going to be is this movement in and out. That's gonna be what the Treasury does, with the idea that the Treasurer's charged with making sure you have money to pay the bills when you have to pay the bills, because you've got all these different funding sources. And Heidi
Right.
Draper's very senior here, very knowledgeable, and is concerned to do it right, which always helps.
Yeah, I was gonna say, that's the right attitude.
That's right,
So-
that's
so
right.
you should feel comfortable with that, but we're trying to set this up so that it flows seamlessly for the people that are charged with doing the project.
Okay, so here's your dates. We're working towards tomorrow noon is when we go out to bid. We've got 2 approvals yet we don't have in hand, but Mark's 90% confident he will have them and be able, so that puts us in Friday's paper. If something prevents that from happening, these dates will be 1 week later. So that gives us, if opening the bids then from that that date would be Tuesday, May 30th, which is 2 weeks before our next council meeting on June 13th. If everything gets pushed back a week, then we'd be opening on June 6th, then we'd have 1 week before the council meeting, so on the 13th.
Either way, the
We're-
council meeting on the 13th
13th is the award of the contract.
Okay, so that's when we do
That's,
the
so
ordinance.
so
we'll
we're
have plenty-
backwards off May 13th.
Okay.
June 13th, I'm sorry. And so have a finance committee meeting,
Anytime in.
yeah, the
Okay, but I'll still do a summary. so
7th
that-
or 8th of June, and that Wednesday,
Well-
Thursday, Friday, even though that would catch the second date.
Yeah, anytime, I think, oh, he's gonna open the bids on the 30th.
30th.
Or the 6th if it
Or the
gets slipped a
6th
week.
if it gets delayed, so best bet would probably be a 7, 8, 9 right there, just to be positive.
Okay, so we should leave it open that we could have a meeting after the 30th to size it if something came up. But we can have a regular meeting in May, we may know everything then. I mean, we might be dialed down to say, here's the parameters.
Yeah.
And then, but then just a conference call or something like that on what we're gonna size this to. I'd feel more comfortable as your treasurer, having you know what it got sized to before you heard it.
What do you
Public.
know, like that Thursday, the 1st?
Yeah, what I'll do is I'll send out it, you'll hear what the bids were. And then, and you'll have some idea then what it is, but we should have a quick either conference
Yeah.
call or get together. Here's how we're gonna size this. Because if you're too short, you got a problem. If you're too
That's
long,
right.
too long, you got a problem.
Yep.
You wanna be within 5%.
Let me just right.
That's right, that's the
Yep,
goal.
yep, yep.
That's the goal. That's the goal. So, there's that piece of that.
That's a big deal for the city.
It's huge.
Should we tentatively schedule something for like the 7th?
That's,
Okay.
whatever the second Thursday is.
It's the
I
8th.
Is it the 8th? That's my PSRC meeting in Seattle.
Yeah.
7th, Wednesday the 7th? or-
Wednesday the 7th in the morning, would that,
Yeah, I don't,
we can just put it down and it's the day after the
Somebody's got
delayed
here
opening.
For a bus tour. Are you doing something with transit?
June 7th, did you say?
Yeah,
Okay, that's good.
Somebody's got a placeholder that says reserved for bus tour on a couple of days that week.
oh, that was potentially going down to California to
Okay.
see that, but I don't know that that's gonna happen, so.
I'm gonna take that out of my calendar then. Okay,
That's good. That's good.
so what date were you guys looking at, we're holding?
June 7th.
June 7th?
June 7th, finance?
Yeah, 7:30.
7:30.
that's a Wednesday.
AM here, and that'd be really for the bond due diligence, we'll call it due diligence for the finance committee on the bond size.
That should really the only thing on the agenda, well, we could do sales tax yet too. Get out of here in an hour.
Yeah, it should.
Because I've got a 9 o'clock in Bremerton, if I could get to that, that would be great.
Right, we can have our May meeting
Or-
in May and,
Get too early though in May, then you're looking at the same numbers though you
Right.
had the month before, so.
yeah.
When I get the numbers, I'll send out the sales tax when I get. Because Sean's not here anyways. Okay, now the other thing that I passed out here was what Councilwoman Ashby asked for, and that was on the gammon tax,
Right.
which Councilman Chang had brought up. And this is what he had requested, which is in a nutshell where we're at with all the information. And
Yeah.
he hadn't shared with me, other than what's this information. I wasn't aware that he was going to suggest that maybe this would take the place of the natural gas. So
We did this analysis and we held a public hearing on this and didn't change it 5-6 years ago. And the rub to this, and it looks like a lot of money, and it is fairly decent amount of money. it is taxed on the gross and not on the net. And so when we held the hearing, we got, every bar owner in town came and testified, because if their fear is we raise the tax, they'll stop doing it, because it won't, you know, if you take it off their gross, that's before they've made their payouts, and all, now they're losing money on it.
Well, the other thing is that they are not able to pass it through.
Correct, because it's on the gross.
Yeah, I mean, so they can't just up the cost of a pull tab by 3 cents to cover it. So it's coming directly out of their pocket.
And like I say, I didn't run any numbers against
Right.
what he would have otherwise expected it to replace. First I'd heard it was that evening. But anyway, there's the raw data.
Have we seen a decrease in pull tab revenue after Moondog's closed?
I'd have to go back.
You'd have to, I was trying to, I don't know who does pull tabs in town. I know Moondog's used to.
High Tide, I would say the Goose.
Bowling alley.
Death,
Probably Red Dog.
Red Dog. Your watering holes.
Okay.
The bowling alley has a big
Yeah.
pull
The
tab
big,
business.
okay.
Yeah. So
Okay.
that's the information if you want.
Well, I guess I was confused a little bit, or not confused, but wanted to know when Councilman Chang was talking about it, he felt that if we raised it to the 6%, that it would generate $75,000 a year.
Yeah, and I don't know.
That's where he's assuming just doubling.
Yeah,
But Rob raises a good point. At some point, it's no longer cost effective and they just stop doing it.
It's not if they were taxing the net after they made their profit, that could run true. If you take it off 6% off their gross and they're netting 3%, they're at a 3% loss. They're not going to do it.
they're not gonna do it at all.
And that's what and I'm making numbers up there, but that's
Right.
that's the testimony we got from the business owners that do these things, that said the margins aren't that strong on this. It's entertainment we provide to our customers, and if you raise this tax, we'll just be forced not to do this activity.
I remember hearing that from Daryl.
Daryl,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was there too.
A pull tab does not have the same credit worthiness than a franchise
oh,
tax.
absolutely not.
And-
I was just wondering if we were leaving money on the table
Right,
somewhere.
right.
So, okay.
Okay, anything more on that?
No, thank you very much.
IT security.
We have gotten information, and we're putting an RFP out on the street for back-end IT security assessment initially. And I met with one consultant that really kind of opened my eyes to, in his opinion, and I think he's right, that we are ignoring what he referred to as our IT infrastructure, which is our SCADA system, the systems that control our water systems, our sewer systems, and governments are very vulnerable in that area, so that's one of the things that should be assessed. Another thing that he brought to my attention is probably 60% of our threats come from internal sources. We allow, per our policies, for casual use, on your break, to check your Facebook page, to check your personal email. And for us, he believes one of the best things we can do for our network security is to ban all personal use. And we have an IT, a public Wi-Fi system in here. This goes to the public Wi-Fi. It doesn't go into our network. It goes through a wave cable, and we can do a lot for our internet for securities from that standpoint. So I'm recommending we move forward. I'll be bringing it to the full council for approval of this contract for our back-end infrastructure what our issues are. This one of the vendors I've been talking to, which I believe will be bidding it, is the county uses this firm for this very service. And then from there, depending on what this assessment tells us, it could be Sitel, it could be another vendor that we pay to monitor our back-end traffic. We're on a fee-based service, so.
None of this is terribly expensive.
I was just gonna ask, you have a range of?
Less than $10,000 for the assessment. Some of the numbers that were thrown out for data breaches and what we've got to do for consumers are staggering, for the records that we hold, from, paying for your fraud detection on your credit report and correcting things for you on our dime, can run us hundreds of thousands of dollars or more.
I think, what did he say? You can, a minimum of $100 per account just to manage a problem. So you take your nearly $5,000 water account, so you got a breach there, and you spend a lot of money really quick.
Just from one data breach.
Because you have to notify, once you get into
Right.
it, to notify people, to put it in their places. So, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of medicine.
So one, we don't know what our needs are until we assess. But I know we have some vulnerability in our utilities in particular, and potentially, there's some easy fixes we can make internally with internal policies. Once I have that information.
Then to carry on to that is I mentioned last meeting that I was going to go back to Sitel and firm up exactly what they were going to do for us, which I've done. I'm going to have a conference call with them this week. I've talked to the attorney who says yes, we can, take the current contract and amend it to make sure that these are in here. There's money in the budget for that. We're trying to balance that off to see if Sitel would do the back room security or another firm would do the back room security piece. So just about got all this in a box now, to have everything documented correctly for you. So
Do you remember the firm's name that the county uses?
They're out of Bremerton. His name's Mike.
it's called Critical.
He's got a soul patch, but I don't know. Yeah,
Critical.
critical something.
Yeah, I got it on my folders downstairs.
Yeah. Too many meetings.
You might want to look at, well, yeah, I don't know where you're at, in your business, but we do have a vendor right in our backyard that's,
Yeah, he's in a block. He's within walking distance of you.
yeah, so, real, if you're looking for somebody to listen to that tells you how, give you a good narrative, very, very impressive.
He met with us just because I live here, and when something happens, I want my water to work, and I want the lights on, and
We heard
it
that,
all matters to me too.
and we heard from him through the county,
Okay.
Got a couple little things that aren't like, so one, the procurement policy.
Did we deal with the staffing question?
Yes.
Okay.
Procurement, state auditor got back to us. Of course, they didn't tell us, fix this sentence here. In fact,
Right.
they reviewed it and said, it appears what you've written meets
federal.
the statutes. When we do our audit, we'll confirm.
That's typical.
And that's a good outcome, I believe. I
Mhm.
think that, you can read that where they say it appears.
Right, they didn't say,
Yeah.
this isn't cut and
Right.
dry.
And I think that if they do find something, well, right now we're operating to that policy. And that's the main day-to-day piece of this, that we do have Cindy Palmer and others now focused on what's the current, are we doing this correctly? That's the first piece that the auditor's gonna look at. And then secondly, how have you got this written down? If there's something within the policy that needs to be tweaked, I think we'll be able to do that. I've asked that they set up, my recommendation is the council accepts the policies as written, but put a piece in there that says, from time to time, if there are changes due to statute, federal code, or MRSC, advisories, that the policies can be updated with the, under the authorization and approval of the mayor, except for those amounts that you put in for change order authority, that can't be changed by staff or the mayor, but only by the council. So you're gonna have a living document on the day-to-day operations piece, but that real piece that's yours will remain untouchable except by council. So that's been my recommendation, so that we're not coming back if they change a statute or MRC. I'd rather have it be a living document, because writing a policy isn't about having the policy to satisfy the auditor. It's that the people that wrote it understand what the rules are that are gonna use it. So, I was trying to push not to just plagiarize. I was trying to say, well, why don't you write it in your own words? So that's where
I
we're at.
wondered if there wouldn't be some value in putting an automatic review, say, once every 4 years by council.
Could be. Yeah, it wouldn't be bad that we went over quite a bit of our code periodically, because we don't.
I hate to have though something in there that says we're gonna do something, and then that fell down into the weeds, and then we didn't do it because we didn't have a need to do it.
I have
And
no
then
problem.
Then an auditor pointing back
Yeah.
to, why, you said you were gonna do this in 2020, and you didn't. It'd be like,
The other thing with
Consent.
what the treasurer indicated is we could have that language in there, and the mayor could make the changes, but the language could include that he informs council of the changes.
there we
Yeah,
go.
no, I agree with what Ellen was saying, and those kind of routine changes then need to come
But
back
even
to us.
report,
But
the
I'm
routine
thinking-
choices still need to be reported. And
Yeah,
maybe that's a trigger of, I'm not comfortable with that, and we need to look at this whole section of that.
I guess what I'm
holistically.
looking for is the different levels of authority, whether that should be an automatic every 4 years or so review. Just, the price of the world changes.
The,
But we did do it on a percentage basis. So-
right, up to a certain, up to
a
amounts.
And those are healthy amounts. I mean, if I whether myself or, predecessor, you're gonna, if it's not enough, it's, I need to raise my hand and say, we're not getting it done.
Under your personnel policies now, we can change the personnel policy, the mayor can, but has to report, and just says from time to time to the council. And you could do that. I mean, that's not bad language. If you put in there, mayor's supposed to report from time to time, at least you have something to go back to and say, oh, we thought we'd, I mean, in the current structure, you don't have a problem, but, maybe someday somebody's gonna go back. You wanna be able to say, hey, that policy says you should inform us at some point. That gives that
Right.
language gives people a lot of flexibility to take care of a problem on a Thursday and maybe report it, which is a crisis for the city staff, but really not to the council, but then tells the mayor, at some point, you gotta bring this up to date. I mean, I throw that out. In whatever
Okay.
language you want.
Anything else, Mayor? Anything for the good of the order?
Was that the staffing thing? Okay.
Okay, I guess we are adjourned.
Thank you.